From a cocaine budget line item to a 324-page script bound in Yellow Pages covers, the making of the Blues Brothers was more chaotic than any car chase in the film. Behind John Belushi's iconic backflips and Dan Aykroyd's harmonica solos lies a production riddled with drug-fueled disappearances, destroyed malls that stayed ruins for decades, and enough vehicular carnage to set world records. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about the Blues Brothers. Fact 1. Dan Aykroyd's first screenplay was 324 pages long. When Dan Aykroyd sat down to write the screenplay for the Blues Brothers, he had never written a script before in his life, and according to him, he had never even read one. This lack of experience became immediately obvious when he delivered his first draft to producer Robert K. Weiss 6 months later. The manuscript was a staggering 324 pages long, which was about 3 times the length of a typical screenplay, where one page usually equals 1 minute of screen time. To put this in perspective, Aykroyd had essentially written a script for a 5-hour movie when the studio was expecting something closer to 2 hours. The screenplay wasn't even formatted like a traditional script with proper stage directions and dialogue formatting, but instead read more like free verse poetry or a detailed outline written in disorganized prose. Aykroyd titled his epic manuscript The Return of the Blues Brothers and credited the author as Scriptatron GL 9000, treating the whole thing as if it had been generated by some kind of futuristic writing machine. Knowing full well that the script was absurdly oversized, Aykroyd decided to lean into the joke by having the massive stack of pages bound in the covers of a Los Angeles Yellow Pages phone directory before turning it in to the producers. The Yellow Pages binding was his way of making light of just how unwieldy and phone book thick his screenplay had become. Director John Landis then had to lock himself away for 3 solid weeks to cut, shape, and rewrite Aykroyd's sprawling vision into something actually filmable, trimming it down to a more manageable length while still keeping the essential story intact, though the final script still lacked certain basics like proper stage directions even after Landis finished his emergency rewrite. Fact 2. The production had an actual drug budget. The Blues Brothers production included something that would be unthinkable on a movie set today: an actual line item in the budget specifically allocated for purchasing cocaine. Dan Aykroyd himself confirmed this unusual arrangement in interviews years later, explaining that cocaine was so prevalent on film sets during that era that the production simply acknowledged the reality and set aside money for it. According to Aykroyd, the drug purchases were primarily intended for the exhausting night shoots when the cast and crew needed to stay energized through long overnight filming sessions, and he described it as a little motivation, a reward at the end of the nights for our hard-working crew. The production even built a private bar on set called the Blues Club, where cast, crew, and their friends could gather between takes and during breaks. What made this setup particularly noteworthy was that, according to Carrie Fisher, who was dating Dan Aykroyd at the time and played the mysterious ex-girlfriend in the film, most of the bar staff working at the Blues Club doubled as drug dealers who could procure whatever substances the patrons desired. Aykroyd was careful to note that while he wasn't personally a heavy user, cocaine was treated as a kind of currency in Hollywood during the late 1970s, comparing it to how methamphetamine had been widely used by factory workers and housewives in previous decades. He emphasized that the drug use didn't impact the actual performances in the movie, pointing out that John Belushi's work in the Blues Brothers was flawless despite his well-documented struggles with addiction, though those struggles would tragically lead to Belushi's death from a drug overdose just 2 years after the film's release in 1982. Fact 3. 103 cars were destroyed, setting a world record. The Blues Brothers holds the distinction of setting a world record for the most cars destroyed in a single film, with a total of 103 vehicles completely wrecked during production. This impressive feat of automotive carnage was no accident, but rather the result of director John Landis's vision for creating the most elaborate and destructive car chase sequences ever filmed, particularly the massive final pursuit through downtown Chicago that takes up the last 20 minutes of the movie. To accomplish this level of destruction, the production purchased 60 used police cars at $400 each and also acquired 13 different versions of the iconic Bluesmobile, the black and white 1974 Dodge Monaco that the brothers drive throughout the film. The production hired 40 different stunt drivers who were flown to Chicago every weekend specifically to pilot these vehicles through the various chase scenes and crash sequences. Recognizing that the cars would need constant maintenance and repairs between takes, the production set up a 24-hour body shop that operated around the clock to keep the fleet of vehicles running for as long as possible, though most of the cars were ultimately destroyed by the time filming wrapped. The record stood for 2 years until it was broken by a 1982 film called The Junkman, which wrecked 150 cars, and the Blues Brothers record was eventually surpassed again decades later by The Matrix Reloaded in 2003, which destroyed over 300 vehicles. Interestingly enough, the sequel Blues Brothers 2000 deliberately destroyed 104 cars just to beat the original film's record by a single vehicle, making it a brief record holder in its own right before other action films pushed the numbers even higher. Fact 4. They destroyed an actual abandoned mall. One of the most memorable sequences in The Blues Brothers features Jake and Elwood driving the Bluesmobile through an entire shopping mall while being chased by police. And this scene wasn't filmed on a Hollywood soundstage, but rather in a real abandoned mall that the production physically destroyed. The location was Dixie Square Mall in Harvey, Illinois, a southern suburb of Chicago that had opened in 1966 but closed permanently in 1978 after only 12 years of operation due to rising crime rates in the area and severe economic decline. Director John Landis rented the empty mall in the summer of 1979 for 8 weeks of filming, and the production crew went to great lengths to make the abandoned space look like a functioning shopping center by filling the stores with actual merchandise borrowed from retailers with the promise that anything undamaged would be returned. They even filled the parking lot with brand new cars, since that was the only way to make the lot look occupied and realistic on camera. During filming, the crew drove cars through storefronts, crashed through display cases and walls, and generally demolished large portions of the mall's interior, leaving it heavily damaged when production wrapped. The Harvey Dixmoor School District attempted to sue Universal Pictures in December 1981 for $87,000, claiming the studio failed to repair the damage as promised, though the lawsuit was eventually dropped due to financial constraints. After that, the mall was simply abandoned and left to decay for 34 years, becoming a notorious landmark for urban explorers and photographers who documented its deteriorating condition until it was finally demolished in May 2012 with the help of government grant funding. Fact 5. Belushi was called the Black Hole for losing hundreds of sunglasses. John Belushi earned an unusual nickname from the cast and crew during the filming of The Blues Brothers, and it had nothing to do with his acting abilities or his notorious party lifestyle. The production team started calling him the Black Hole because of his seemingly supernatural ability to make sunglasses disappear at an alarming rate throughout the entire shoot. The iconic black Ray-Ban Wayfarer sunglasses that both Blues Brothers wear throughout the film are absolutely essential to their look and are visible in nearly every scene, which meant that maintaining continuity required Belushi to have the exact same pair of sunglasses for each take. The problem was that Belushi would finish filming a scene while wearing his sunglasses, and then, by the time the crew was ready to film the next scene, the sunglasses would have mysteriously vanished without a trace. This pattern repeated itself over and over again throughout the months of production, with Belushi going through hundreds of pairs of identical sunglasses that simply disappeared into thin air somewhere between takes. The nickname the Black Hole was a reference to the astronomical phenomenon that swallows everything that comes near it, never to be seen again, which perfectly described what seemed to be happening to every pair of sunglasses that came into Belushi's possession. The production had to keep a massive supply of replacement sunglasses on hand at all times just to ensure they could maintain visual consistency from shot to shot. And the sheer volume of lost eyewear became one of the running jokes among the crew members who witnessed this bizarre phenomenon day after day during filming in Chicago and Los Angeles. the R-rated film received Vatican endorsement. The Blues Brothers is an R-rated comedy filled with car chases, explosions, profanity, and references to less than wholesome behavior, which makes it all the more surprising that the Vatican officially endorsed it as essential viewing for Catholics around the world. In June 2010, on the 30th anniversary of the film's original release, the Vatican's official newspaper called L'Osservatore Romano published an article declaring The Blues Brothers to be a Catholic classic and recommended it as viewing for Catholics everywhere. This unexpected blessing placed the raucous musical comedy alongside genuinely religious films like Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments, Franco Zeffirelli's Jesus of Nazareth, Mel Gibson's The Passion of the Christ, Victor Fleming's Joan of Arc, and Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life. On the Vatican's list of approved Catholic films, the Vatican's chief editor explained that despite the film's rough edges and R rating, the story's Catholic and spiritual elements were substantial, and the film was rich with ideas that aligned with Catholic values of redemption and helping others. The newspaper specifically pointed out that the entire plot revolves around Jake and Elwood going on a literal mission from God to save the Catholic orphanage where they were raised from financial ruin. And it even noted that a photograph of a young Pope John Paul II appears hanging on a wall in one scene of the movie. The Vatican's endorsement highlighted how the film is fundamentally about redemption, with Jake Blues getting out of prison and immediately setting out to do something good despite facing numerous obstacles, ultimately paying the price by returning to prison after successfully delivering the tax money that saves the orphanage. Fact 7. John Belushi wandered into random homes. John Belushi had a habit of disappearing from the set during production, but one particular incident during a late-night filming session became legendary among the cast and crew. The production was shooting one of the mall chase scenes in the middle of the night when Belushi suddenly vanished without telling anyone where he was going, leaving Dan Aykroyd and the rest of the crew scrambling to figure out where their lead actor had gone. Aykroyd took it upon himself to search for his friend and co-star. And as he looked around the weed-strewn parking lot of the abandoned mall, he noticed a grassy path leading away from the filming location into a nearby suburban neighborhood. Following his instincts, Aykroyd walked down the path and into the residential area, where he saw a single house with its lights still on in the otherwise dark neighborhood. When Aykroyd approached the house and prepared to knock on the door to ask if anyone had seen Belushi, the homeowner opened the door, looked at him with a knowing smile, and immediately said, "You're here for John Belushi, aren't you?" before Aykroyd could even introduce himself or explain the situation. The homeowner then calmly explained that Belushi had simply walked into their house uninvited, helped himself to a glass of milk, and made himself a sandwich from their refrigerator, and then crashed on their living room couch where he was currently fast asleep. This incident became so emblematic of Belushi's behavior during the production that Aykroyd started affectionately referring to him as America's guest because of how comfortable the actor felt making himself at home wherever he happened to be, with strangers apparently happy to accommodate the famous comedian even when he showed up unannounced in the middle of the night. Fact 8. Musical legends struggled with movie conventions. The Blues Brothers featured performances by some of the greatest soul and rhythm and blues singers in music history. But these legendary performers struggled with one of the basic technical requirements of making a musical film. Aretha Franklin and James Brown both had extreme difficulty with the standard movie practice of lip-syncing to pre-recorded tracks, which is the typical way musical numbers are filmed to ensure perfect audio quality and consistency across multiple takes. The problem was that both Franklin and Brown were such natural and instinctive performers that they literally couldn't sing a song the same way twice, making it nearly impossible for them to match their lip movements to a recording they had made earlier. According to director John Landis, Aretha Franklin found lip-syncing so challenging that her iconic performance of the song Think in the film had to be assembled from many different takes, with the editors carefully selecting only the brief moments where her lips actually matched up with the pre-recorded audio and piecing them together into what appears to be a single, continuous performance. James Brown faced the same challenge during his gospel church scene, but the production found a different solution for the godfather of soul by having him simply perform the entire number live on a Universal Studios soundstage while the cameras rolled. with the audio being captured during filming and then enhanced later with additional overdubs recorded at a studio in New York City. John Lee Hooker also performed his song Boom Boom completely live during filming at Chicago's Maxwell Street Market, capturing the authentic energy of a real street performance, while the rest of his backing musicians lip-synced to the pre-recorded track playing in the background. Fact 9. The original story. Had the Bluesmobile as magical, anyone who watches the Blues Brothers can't help but notice that the Bluesmobile, the battered old police car that Jake and Elwood drive throughout the film, seems to possess almost supernatural abilities that allow it to perform impossible stunts like jumping over drawbridges, doing backflips, and surviving crashes that would destroy any normal vehicle. What most viewers don't know is that Dan Aykroyd's original script actually included a scene that explained exactly why the car had these magical powers, providing a specific in-universe reason for its seemingly indestructible nature and gravity-defying capabilities. The deleted scene showed Elwood parking the Bluesmobile inside an electric power transformer room located underneath one of Chicago's elevated train lines, where the car would absorb electrical energy from the high-voltage equipment that powered the trains running overhead. This supernatural charging process was supposed to explain how the vehicle gained its extraordinary abilities and why it could accomplish feats that were physically impossible for a regular 1974 Dodge Monaco. Director John Landis actually filmed this scene, and it appears in the extended version of the movie, but he made the decision to cut it from the original theatrical release because he felt that a magic car simply didn't need any explanation, and that trying to rationalize the impossible stunts would actually make them less fun and entertaining. Landis believed that audiences would be more willing to accept the Bluesmobile's supernatural abilities if they were just presented as part of the film's heightened reality without any attempt to justify them with pseudo-scientific explanations. And his instinct proved correct as the car's impossible stunts became some of the most beloved and memorable moments in the entire movie. Fact 10. Spielberg played the tax office clerk. The Blues Brothers features numerous celebrity cameos throughout the film, but one of the most surprising and easy to miss is the appearance of Steven Spielberg, who was already one of the most famous directors in Hollywood by 1980 thanks to blockbusters like Jaws and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Spielberg appears in a brief but crucial scene near the very end of the movie when Jake and Elwood finally arrive at the Cook County Assessor's Office in Chicago's City Hall building to pay the $5,000 tax bill that will save their childhood orphanage from being shut down. After the brothers have frantically raced through the building with hundreds of police officers, firefighters, and National Guard troops in pursuit, they reach the assessor's office only to find it closed, and they desperately pound on the locked door, hoping someone is still inside. The door finally opens to reveal a bored-looking clerk who is casually munching on a sandwich during his break. And this clerk is played by none other than Steven Spielberg himself in an uncredited cameo role. Spielberg's character accepts their tax payment and stamps their receipt just moments before the brothers are immediately arrested by the massive army of law enforcement that has been chasing them throughout the entire film. The cameo was likely arranged through the friendship between Spielberg and director John Landis, who had both worked with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd on the 1979 comedy film 1941, which Spielberg directed and Landis had connections to through the Hollywood community, making it easy for Landis to convince his fellow director to make a quick appearance in The Blues Brothers. Fact 11. Original Keyboardist kicked off film. Paul Shaffer was one of the founding members of the Blues Brothers band and served as their musical director, helping Dan Aykroyd and John Belushi assemble the group of talented musicians who played on their Saturday Night Live appearances and their hit album Briefcase Full of Blues. Despite his crucial role in creating the band, Shaffer is notably absent from the Blues Brothers movie, and the reason for his absence involves a conflict that devastated their professional relationship. Saturday Night Live creator Lorne Michaels asked Shaffer to work on a concert documentary called Gilda Live, featuring SNL cast member Gilda Radner, and Shaffer agreed to help his close friend with the project. John Belushi specifically warned Shaffer not to take the Gilda Radner job and instead told him to rest and prepare for the Blues Brothers film, but Schaffer felt confident he could handle both projects simultaneously and assured Belushi that everything would work out fine. Unfortunately, the work on Gilda Radner's album and documentary took much longer than expected, and Schaffer found himself unable to commit to the Blues Brothers movie on the timeline that production required. Belushi was furious about what he saw as Schaffer choosing to split his creative energy between competing Saturday Night Live projects, and he issued a formal statement to their group of SNL colleagues declaring that Schaffer was out of the Blues Brothers and would never be a Blues Brother again. Schaffer later described this as one of the worst professional situations of his life, and he was replaced in the film by keyboardist Murphy Dunn. Years later, Schaffer did get a chance at redemption when he signed on to produce the music for the 1998 sequel Blues Brothers 2000, and even appeared in a small role in that film. Fact 12. Mystery Woman's Weapon defied physics. Carrie Fisher plays a vengeful ex-girlfriend known only as the Mystery Woman, who spends much of the Blues Brothers attempting to kill Jake and Elwood using increasingly destructive weapons, and one of her most memorable attacks involves firing a rocket launcher at the brothers outside their apartment building. The scene features a noticeable continuity error that somehow made it into the final cut of the film, despite being fairly obvious to anyone paying close attention to the weapon itself. Fisher's character fires 5 separate rockets at the Blues Brothers during this sequence, but the launcher she's holding only has 4 tubes, meaning she somehow managed to shoot one more rocket than her weapon was physically capable of holding. Beyond this mathematical impossibility, the scene also completely ignores the real-world physics of how rocket launchers actually work, which would have made Fisher's attack method incredibly dangerous for her own character. The weapon appears to be loosely based on an M202 flash launcher, and this type of shoulder-fired rocket system produces a massive backblast of hot gases and flames that shoot out the rear of the weapon when it's fired. Because Fisher's character is shown firing the launcher while sitting inside her car with the rear of the weapon pointed directly at the windshield, the 16-meter backblast zone would have realistically shattered the windshield and probably blown out all the other windows in the vehicle, and the intense heat and flames would likely have set both the car's interior and Fisher's character herself on fire. The scene plays these physics-defying moments purely for comedy, treating the rocket launcher like a simple point-and-shoot weapon with no dangerous consequences for the person firing it. Fact 13. Dan Aykroyd proposed after saving Carrie Fisher's life. Dan Aykroyd and Carrie Fisher developed a romantic relationship during the filming of The Blues Brothers, and their engagement came about in one of the most unusual and dramatic ways imaginable. The two actors had been set up by John Belushi, who thought they would make a good couple, and they began dating while working together on the movie in Chicago. One evening, while they were out to dinner together, Fisher began choking on her food and found herself unable to breathe, creating a terrifying medical emergency that required immediate action. Fisher later explained in interviews that she had been eating Brussels sprouts, which she jokingly described as some kind of vegetable that I shouldn't have been eating, when one of them became lodged in her throat and completely blocked her airway. Aykroyd initially thought Fisher was laughing at something, but he quickly realized she was actually dying and immediately sprang into action by performing the Heimlich maneuver on her, successfully dislodging the Brussels sprout and saving her life. According to Fisher's own account of the incident, Aykroyd asked her to marry him approximately 10 minutes after rescuing her from choking, turning a life-threatening moment into a marriage proposal. Fisher found the timing both romantic and humorous, later joking that her thought process was, "Wow, what if that happens again? I should probably marry him," since he had already proven he could save her life in an emergency. The engagement didn't ultimately lead to marriage, as the couple eventually broke up, but the story of how Aykroyd proposed remains one of the most memorable behind-the-scenes tales from the Blues Brothers production. Fact 14. The city granted permission to drive over 100 mph. The massive car chase sequences in the Blues Brothers required an unprecedented level of cooperation from the city of Chicago, including permission to do things that would normally be completely illegal and incredibly dangerous on public streets. One of the most remarkable permissions granted by the city allowed the film's stunt drivers to drive the Bluesmobile at speeds exceeding 100 miles per hour through downtown Chicago, specifically under the elevated train lines on Lake Street, where they reached an astonishing 118 miles per hour during filming. Director John Landis later emphasized just how unusual and dangerous this was, noting that the production had 34 cars traveling at 110 miles per hour through the streets of downtown Chicago, and he doubted that anyone would ever be allowed to do something like that again, given modern safety regulations and liability concerns. The city's support for the production went far beyond just granting permission for high-speed driving, as Chicago provided massive amounts of personnel and equipment to help stage the climactic chase sequence that takes up the final 20 minutes of the film. According to Landis, the city supplied 60 Chicago police officers, 150 National Guardsmen, and 400 troops to participate in the chase scenes, along with 17 ambulances, 4 Sherman tanks, 3 helicopters, 350 guns, and 150 batons to make the pursuit look as authentic and overwhelming as possible. This level of government cooperation was made possible because Chicago's Mayor Jane Byrne, who took office in 1979, actively encouraged film productions to shoot in the city and even established a film office specifically to attract more movies and television shows to Chicago, helping to transform it into a major filming destination. Fact 15. Theater owner refused to show it. In white neighborhoods, the Blues Brothers faced significant obstacles when it came time for its theatrical release, not because of poor quality or bad reviews, but because of blatant racial discrimination from a powerful theater chain owner. Despite being a big-budget studio film that would normally open in approximately 1,400 theaters across the United States, the Blues Brothers premiered in only 600 theaters, receiving less than half the bookings that a movie of its size and budget would typically expect. This dramatic reduction in the film's initial release was largely due to Ted Mann, who owned the Mann Theaters chain that dominated film exhibition across the western United States, particularly in affluent areas. Mann explicitly told director John Landis that he would not book the Blues Brothers in any theaters located in predominantly white neighborhoods such as Westwood in Los Angeles, stating plainly, "Because I don't want any blacks in Westwood," as his reasoning for the decision. Mann further explained his refusal by claiming that white audiences wouldn't want to see what he dismissively called a black movie, arguing that the legendary soul and rhythm and blues performers featured in the film, including Aretha Franklin, James Brown, Ray Charles, and Cab Calloway, were not only black, but also out of fashion, and therefore not appealing to white moviegoers. Universal Studios head Lew Wasserman invited Landis to a meeting where Mann explained these views directly, leaving the director and studio executives with little recourse since Mann controlled so many theaters in key markets. Despite this discriminatory booking strategy that severely limited its theatrical distribution, the Blues Brothers still managed to earn $57 million at the domestic box office and another $58 million internationally, proving Mann's racist assumptions completely wrong.